I haven't talked about that anywhere, but
stop trying to like find ways to poke holes into these wide receivers and just say, you know what?
We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. Way too early wide receiver rankings, or at the very least, a fantasy football debate in February. Always a good time. We have Matt Harmon and Jake Seeley with us. But first off, we have Matt Harmon. You guys know him from Reception Perception and Yahoo Sports. Harmon, you ready to talk about some wide receivers in February, my man? It is early, but never too early, as they say, right?
No, it's never too early for me. Look, several of these guys I've already put through Reception Perception for their 2020 season that we're going to talk about. It's going to be such an awesome off season for a wide receiver movement with the free agent class that we have, with yet another stacked draft class of wide receivers coming our way. So no, it's never too early to talk about this stuff. The people have got to get informed early. They've got to get on the action right now.
I love to hear that we have some rookies to look forward to again. I was kind of nervous last year. I missed out a little bit on this like generational class, but it sounds like we have another good one, man. So I'll look forward to obviously Reception Perception just to dig into some of the rookies that we just had. Obviously, you used to chart rookies, right? When you had access to all that NFL data when you're at NFL.com, right?
I don't know. This is like kind of breaking news, but I'll say I'm cautiously optimistic that we might actually get some rookie Reception Perception content this year, man. Yeah. And I haven't talked about that anywhere, but last couple of days, I'll just say I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't want to promise anything yet, but we could be looking at some rookie charting for the first time since I think 2018.
That's amazing, dude. I can't wait to see that if it does come to fruition. I know that we were just talking about before we went live. We're always giving ourselves more work. So some of like the stuff we put ourselves through, it's a little bit self-inflicted at times, but that's great, man. That's great news. You know his work at The Athletic. Follow him on Twitter at AllInKid. Jake, you ready to talk about some wide receivers, my man? We already knocked out running back. We already knocked about quarterback. So we got through all the things that I did wrong in those positions. I'm sure there'll be more things that I did wrong about wide receiver. But good time of the year, my man. You ready for this?
No, yeah, I'm definitely ready for it. And I was going to say no, because I don't think you can get too much wrong at wide receiver, because you can nitpick. And basically, if you want to take the victory lap at the end of the season and be like, I told you this guy was number 5, you're going to be fine, because you will see when we talk about it. I think there's a very big range after we get past the top 3, which I think we agree 100% on the top 3.
Well, this is good then, because I was worried that there was some differences in opinion already, but this is definitely a position to where, yeah, I'm all about the victory laps, Jake. So let's clip the parts of this video in about 3 or 4 months when like ADP settles in and we were the first ones, right? And we'll just cut everything else out. I think that's the play. So we both have Devontae Adams number 1, Tyreek Hill number 2. I don't think we're giving away too much by saying that, Jake. Obviously, if everyone wants your full rankings, they can go check those out at The Athletic. But a couple of the main differences that at least I saw kind of off the bat, I'm definitely super high on Keenan Allen. He was someone that was, I believe, just outside your top 10 or very close the last time you were kind of adjusting those. So is there any specific reason you're down on Keenan Allen, or do you just like some of those other guys in that range significantly more?
It's just more of the guys in front of him. This is coming from the person who I know was one of the highest on Keenan Allen last year. If you want to talk about victory laps, it's just like, I don't understand why he was going where he's going. And that's when it was with Tyrod Taylor too. It's just, and it was why Keenan Allen did what he did this year. Herbert kept it going even more so than Tyrod Taylor did, but it was the volume. It's like, what's the difference between Allen Robinson and Keenan Allen? I mean, you're talking about a target share in the 25 range, potentially even more. That's why I love Keenan Allen, and that's why I have some championships I'll give credit to Keenan Allen for, because I had him on a ton of teams this year. And now I'm kind of like lower-ish, but it's really, we're nitpicking here. And that's why I say I'm looking at my rankings. And if you wanted to put Keenan Allen at number 6, and I have him, you're right, I have him at 11, right outside the top 10. I'm not going to argue that much with you.
Pretty high on Keenan Allen right now at number 7. Jake had him a little bit lower than I do. I guess if they draft someone or go into free agency for one of these guys, do you think that significantly hurts a guy like Keenan Allen, who's lived a little bit off of volume at times? Obviously this year he had some injury troubles down the stretch, still scored a ton of touchdowns. Do you think if one of these guys steps in, or they spend significant draft capital, that it hurts a guy like Keenan Allen? Like, would you move him down on your list at that point?
Well, if they added a big ticket free agent receiver, and again, there's a lot of guys that they could add, if they add sort of that Kenny Golladay type of player, even if we're talking about a couple steps down from Robinson as a big vertical receiver, sort of basically the souped up version of what Mike Williams is, because I think Williams has had his moments, obviously, and I like Mike Williams a lot. I'm high on him as a player, but he gets hurt all the time. And that's just sort of the style of game that he plays. Like all of these fantastic catches that we see Mike Williams make where he goes up and sacrifices his body. Well, yeah, he's sacrificing his body all the time. And he's got that bad back injury that pops up all the time because he lands on his back when he makes those crazy catches. So if they add someone in the Golladay or higher mold, I think that would bump Keenan Allen down. But if they just sort of add some depth in the draft, I don't know that they would take a big swing in the first round at that like priority position, because this is something this is more of a longer view topic, Joe. I don't know if it makes sense to really dive into right now. But even if we're talking about this is a great wide receiver draft class that's coming in, I don't know that I'm spending like the third overall pick if you're the Miami Dolphins on any of these guys. I don't know that they're and even and that's not to degrade the players. It's just like the wide receiver position is so stacked in the NFL right now that you can get down on this ranking until the 30th ranked wide receiver, and you're thinking like, this guy's got a pretty good shot to have a big season in 2021. Like this position is stacked right now, so I don't know that we're going to see teams spend those big time draft resources to get guys when the last few draft classes have showed us the studs of today, the Terry McLaurin, the A.J. Brown, the DK Metcalf level of guys, even last year, T. Higgins, Chase Claypool, like you can find talent outside of the first round. So that's sort of a long-winded way of saying I don't know that I see the Chargers attacking that position in the first round, but if they're going to go all in on offense, it would kind of make sense to bring in a proven talent in free agency that you already know is a high-end guy.
I love Keenan Allen again. I want to see, do the Chargers address the wide receiver position? Do they say, all right, we keep trying the Mike Williams scenario and it's just not working? Do we ask Guyton to be the second guy and Mike Williams just kind of be like the third possession receiver? Do we ask Johnson to be the second guy? Or do we draft somebody in another deep draft class for wide receiver? I'd be interested to see what they do. And of course, no Hunter Henry is there as well, potentially. He's a free agent. So there's a lot that could change, but I'm not going to complain that you have him at 7 and I have him at 11.
I think the Keenan Allen thing, I think I'm already going to be a little bit higher than the field on the Chargers just going into the season, looking at kind of some of the early ADP stuff that's coming out, really like Austin Eckler as well. But in terms of Keenan Allen, like it basically was just the injuries down the stretch that really prevented him from kind of hitting that 1,000-yard season again. That would have been his 4th straight year as a 1,000-yard wide receiver. Still had 8 TDs over those 14 games. We saw just those massive blow-up games. And to your point, I guess maybe that's an argument against him in some ways, because if they do add to that wide receiver corp, and guess maybe they end up going out and drafting someone like you said, maybe there isn't that massive volume ceiling, but we've seen Justin Herbert just lock into him at times. So I still like Keenan Allen a ton. Obviously he's not someone that I took like a huge stand on. He's at number 7 for me right now, but I do like him quite a bit. Let's get these guys a quarterback, man. I think they could move up the rankings pretty significantly if they do.
Actually, one of the things I think about too is if the Jets are the team that makes the big move for Deshaun Watson, and I have no idea, if and when that trade's going to happen. I feel like that could be something, if he does get traded, it's not going to happen right away. Like we saw Matthew Stafford move right away. I don't think the Watson thing is going to happen that way. But if we get clarity on that before the opening of free agency, that would be a spot. Like if Watson goes to the Jets, I could see Robinson then following him there because, good quarterback, obviously they've got a ton of cap room. That could be an interesting pairing, but yeah, for sure. Robinson, it's really tough to play that matchmaker game with him though. Cause if you look at the teams that are kind of up there in terms of salary cap space, the Jaguars are actually interesting. They have the most cap space in the league. Obviously we expect them to get Trevor Lawrence. I don't know if Jacksonville's like, the spot where Robinson would go back to, but that's one of the few spots that's attractive. A sneaky spot that I think about for him and some of these other free agent receivers is actually the Chargers, because they're 11th in cap space right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go all in on offense surrounding Justin Herbert with talent, especially because they have a defensive-minded head coach that you would assume is going to coach things up. And they've got good players over there too. Why not go in and add like a big ticket free agent wide receiver and just throw the ball over the yard with Herbert and Austin Eckler coming out of the backfield as a receiver too? An interesting pairing, but that might just be like the longtime Robinson truther inside me begging for him to finally play with an above average quarterback.
There's a very big group here where I think you could go past even the top 12 is once you get to number 6, in my opinion, maybe even number 7, and you kept going all the way down to 14 or 15.
Just wanted to give you some outs, see where I was at on some of the guys that didn't quite make my top 10 that I think were just in yours. I mean, I'm with you. That tier, like you could probably add like 4 or 5 names and still feel pretty good about it.
Right. I mean, we're not. I was looking at both of our groups, and neither of us have Mike Evans in there. If there's no Chris Godwin in Tampa Bay, if he leaves and he doesn't come back, I mean, honestly, Chris Godwin will probably still be in the fringe wide receiver 1 conversation. But now you put Mike Evans back into it because he's not dealing with Chris Godwin, and only be Antonio Brown assumedly next year. But there's a lot of names you can put in there.
One guy that just sneaks in to my top 10, though, Harmon, is your boy Justin Jefferson. Do you think that is a little bit too aggressive? Do you think that he could be a top 10 wide receiver in 2021? Or I guess there's still some uncertainty, I guess maybe with some of the rumors with Kirk Cousins. But just in general, it seems like it's always tough, I guess, to invest in the passing game for the Vikings because they want to be so run heavy. But want your Justin Jefferson thoughts?
I don't think it's too aggressive. I think Justin Jefferson could be that type of player, right? Like he's one of these guys that I've just put through reception perception, and we're talking about a rookie season that's right up there with guys like Terry McLaurin from last year, and you know how high I was on Terry McLaurin this year. We're talking about that Odell Beckham, like just a step down type of rookie season from what he had in reception perception. And even statistically, I mean, Jefferson was there as a rookie, like being up there with the Beckham caliber type of rookie season. So I have no questions about the player. I think he can be an elite, true number 1 receiver. So I got no problems with you ranking him aggressively here. I don't, Kirk Cousins, maybe he moves, maybe he doesn't. I think that they're going to probably keep him around, to make another push at the postseason. This is still sort of a veteran-laden team with guys that are in the middle of their prime. Obviously, they're sort of reworking on the defense, but on the offensive side of it, they still got Thielen and Cook as guys who are kind of squarely in the middle of, or maybe on Thielen's case, like right at the end of their apex or whatever. But you've got Jefferson on the rise. I think they keep the quarterback situation pretty stable. So I got no questions with Jefferson, and it's mostly because I do believe he is that type of receiver where he can be right up there in terms of the top 10. He might already be competing for that fringe top 10 in terms of just true NFL talent. That's how good he was as a rookie. And it's not crazy to put him in that conversation.
Another guy that both of us seem to be really high on, Jake, is A.J. Brown. Like, this guy comes out on social media and talks about the injury that he was battling through all year, like a knee injury that he could have just been completely shut down through the season. He battled through it, still had a fantastic season. So it sounds like you're on the same page as me. If he's healthy coming into this next year, like, he's a guy that's already been super impressive, super efficient. So I'm huge on A.J. Brown right now. Sounds like you're right there with me, though.
100%. And I think AJ Brown is one of the few wide receivers. I'll throw out the other name is Michael Thomas, especially if Jameis Winston is the quarterback, which we talked about in your last show. But, that's going to be up in the air. We've seen Michael Thomas be the number 1. And what I was about to say is AJ Brown would be one of the few names who I could see push for the number 1 status, because we're talking about, you said injured. Talking about injured, he was 5th in fantasy points per game for wide receivers while playing hurt most of the season. And what if Corey Davis isn't back? And all of a sudden we get A.J. Brown. Obviously, they're not going to ignore the wide receiver position and say, all right, that's just fine. But what if we get A.J. Brown with a 25% target share? If we get A.J. Brown healthy with a 25% target share, he is pushing Devontae Adams. Like, that's what we're talking about. So I think that A.J. Brown is definitively top 5 for me. I'm looking at my top 7, and of 3 of those, I'll just give the names. People could go check it. Top 10 is not going to be that interesting of like giving too much away.
Right.
But, Diggs, Ridley, inside of my top 7, Diggs, Ridley, and Hopkins, I don't think can be number 1. I think they are definitively potential top 5s. Mm-hmm. But where you're talking about who can be Devontae Adams, I think we just saw another amazing season from Tyreek Hill, but I think he kind of peters out right as the number 2. I would say Adams, Michael Thomas, who's done it, and I put A.J. Brown as the other person.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess you're higher even than I was on him, but I love that because that's been one that I've definitely been targeting earlier this off season. Is there anything when you saw kind of my initial pass at this that you thought was a little bit out of whack, or was there anyone that I had a little bit lower that you liked significantly more?
Obviously, I'm never going to hate on you having Terry McLaurin at number 11. It's aggressive. There's no doubt about it, especially because we don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. Now that Matthew Stafford's off the board, I think we talked about this on the show. I think that Stafford would have been a good fit for them. I think they did make a pretty aggressive offer, but just nothing could compete with what the Rams were going to offer for them to also take Jared Goff's contract off the books. So, like, Terry McLaurin's aggressive there, but at the same time, if they do something at quarterback, I think this offense has enough potential for him to land there. And your point about Calvin Ridley, I thought was interesting. Like, he's a guy that I think he can be that wide receiver 6 type of talent. Like, I mean, I think he's that player already. He's always been that type of separator. And I think this is a team in Atlanta that is going to go all in on offense. And I love, like, some of the ways that they would use A.J. Brown. They're not comparable players in terms of Calvin Ridley and A.J. Brown. Obviously, they're built differently. But getting Ridley on some of those plays in space, those quick-hitting slants and everything, that is really a type of offense that I think could fit him very well. I think Ridley could really explode this year, even though he's already coming off a big season. I think he proved last year that he can be Atlanta's alpha. And, I mean, even if Julio Jones – I wouldn't be surprised if Julio Jones has like a minor renaissance.
Yeah, I mean, Ridley still, career highs last year, 90 receptions, over 1,300 receiving yards, 9.6 yards per target, Harmon. I mean, this guy is an absolute baller. I love Calvin Ridley. I rarely play these really expensive wide receivers in DFS, and I played a ton of Calvin Ridley this year, so I'm not really like disagreeing with you in that way. I guess he just scares me a little bit too much to put him like in my top 5. Yeah.
I would keep him inside my top 5. The biggest thing too is I understand, like, obviously if Matt Ryan's gone, and depending on who the replacement is, could be a complete wrench thrown into the situation.
Sure.
And you'll have some of the people that also argue Matt Ryan's not as good in his first year under a new coordinator as he is his second season. But again, this is just excuses. Calvin Ridley just showed he answered the question of what if there's no Julio Jones and he is treated like the number 1 receiver by defenses. Can he handle double coverage? Can he handle being bracketed? Can he handle the safety coming down? Like, he did, and then some. He is definitively a wide receiver 1 in the NFL, and I would say at this point, he has now surpassed Julio Jones as the number 1. And 1A to 1B, almost similar to like Fitzgerald and Bolden when they were playing together. And those
one of them
great
scores
days.
Touchdowns. That's nice.
Yeah, that's always nice too. But yes, I say Calvin Ridley's okay, unless the only way that Calvin Ridley slides out of the top 5 for me, and even if Matt Ryan's back, he's still inside the top 5. If Matt Ryan is replaced by somebody like Teddy, which is not going to happen, but I'm just trying to think of somebody who's like a conservative passer, not going to be attempting 580, 600 passes in the season. That's the only way I would slide Ridley down. And as of right now, I have Julio Jones just inside the top 20. So I'm firmly on Ridley. By the way, if we're both on screen, I have a back scratcher here. I tried to ignore it, but I got that spot in the middle of my back. I have to scratch it live on camera. I'm sorry.
That's amazing. Just recorded with Jake also just like kind of a first look at like the first round of fantasy drafts, and it's similar in some ways to where it's just so top heavy at running back, but like I can talk myself into like so many wide receivers even outside of my top 10, like outside of my top 15 that could have big years. The last guy I want to ask you about, Harmon, is Michael Thomas, because he's been one that I've had a really difficult time ranking just without Drew Brees. If it does end up being Jameis Winston, again, like these quarterback situations are constantly shifting. Where are you at on Michael Thomas early in the offseason?
Yeah, it's tough, man. Thomas it's going to be a weird situation seeing it without Drew Brees, because it's sort of a chicken and the egg. You know, when we always talk about Michael Thomas as just a slant route runner, just a guy that works the intermediate and short areas of the field. But a lot of that, and I think even Thomas, you know, he had some cryptic tweet that sort of insinuated that it was mostly a Brees-laden thing. I thought for the last few years that when you watch Michael Thomas play, like chart him in reception perception on a route-by-route basis, they don't ask him to do it very much. He doesn't get a lot of targets there, but I think he can stack defensive backs to the point where he can win downfield, especially because he's such a good 50-50 ball receiver. So if they do end up bringing back a Jameis Winston, at quarterback, which I don't think they can just roll with Taysom Hill, right? They have to have some sort of competition there. But I have no idea how the Saints are going to bring back Jameis Winston, because I have no idea how they're going to work their salary cap situation. I mean, they're in such a hole right now. It's just almost hard to talk anything with the New Orleans Saints in 2021 because they're just straight broke from a salary cap perspective. I mean, $90 million over the cap right now. That obviously Brees, if he retires, that might change things up a little bit. But still, they're so far in the hole, you have no idea what kind of moves they could make. But again, if they bring back Jameis, and we like Jameis for fantasy, right? Like, I don't like Jameis as a real-life quarterback, but we like him for fantasy. I think Thomas can do a little bit more than what we've seen during the Brees era, where he's just running a ton of slants and just working that short to intermediate area. I think he can expand beyond that. I don't think he's one of the 5 best receivers in the NFL or anything like that. I think he could end up becoming a bargain if they do sort of solve their quarterback position, if it's not just Taysom Hill. Now, if it's Taysom Hill, or, someone else, it might be kind of all bets off. But really, the Saints are just such a mystery this offseason because of that cap situation.
Matt Harmon, everyone. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at @MattHarmon_BYB. Looking forward to reception perception again this summer, my man. Definitely where I'm starting my process at wide receiver. We should talk about Michael Thomas a little bit more, though, because I actually don't know if I see it as a huge positive. It ends up being Jameis Winston because we've never seen him really with that downfield role before. I think it just seems like an odd fit. But I think we've talked about this on the show as well. Maybe it was Harmon, but I think it was you. It doesn't mean that Michael Thomas can't win down the field, right? Is that right. The argument you're making here, that he's good enough, if healthy, to still be that elite wide receiver, and that he should be a little bit higher up than I'm at 9 currently. But that's more of, again, similar to Calvin Ridley. There's some uncertainty there, quarterback. That kind of scares me.
Well, so I'll bring up a couple things. DK Metcalf can only play outside and can only run the big routes. Okay. Keenan Allen runs a big slot just like Michael Thomas, and that's going to limit him because that's he runs that, and that limits his ability. Kenny Golladay just runs deep routes all the time too. Although he's got more of a dimension than these, but yeah, that's going to limit. You can make a case, come up with all the excuses in the world. Like these receivers only. Tyreek Hill only runs deep routes and runs out of that slot seam a lot. Let's stop with. I'm not saying you are, but all the people are okay, not everybody's going to be Calvin Johnson. But even Calvin Johnson, it wasn't like he was running curl routes because they didn't need him to all the time. But stop trying to find ways to poke holes into these wide receivers and just say, you know what? Some receivers are different styles than others, but they can succeed. If Michael Thomas is still a big slot, still doing this type of opportunity next year, he can be fine with Jameis Winston, just like he was amazing with Drew Brees. Winston being more aggressive downfield is not going to do anything but potentially help Michael Thomas because he wins down there, and he wins in contested catches. He wins in a lot of places. So Michael Thomas has nothing to do. Actually, I think I covered up his jersey when he lost it that one day. Yeah, I did. I have Gary Carter up there now. When Michael Thomas was kind of going bonkers the one day. Yeah. But Michael Thomas, I have his jersey for that reason because it was super high. I'm coming out of Ohio State. Had him on the podcast. It was very quiet at the time. He kind of went the Odell Beckham route. But really. He was when I had him on the podcast, he was super, very much what do you see of your style in the NFL? I'm just going to try and do what the coaches tell me to do and grow. Where's a really cool place? Yeah, where do you find the coolest place to go hang out with fans or get drinks or whatever? I just try to stay at home and I don't try to do too much out there. And stark difference from who he is.
The Sidney Crosby interview where you can already know you know exactly what he's going to say before he says this because it's always going to be it's going to be the least polarizing answer of all time.
Yeah, it was so much player coach speak. It was so funny. It was so quiet back in the day, but. Anyway, let's say, Michael Thomas, I'll have him at 6 right now. And if he finishes number 2, it wouldn't shot. I will have Michael Thomas in a bounce back season, especially if it's Jameis Winston.
Yeah. So that's the one part of it that scares me a little bit because he's still easily, that seems like the one that could go up and down pretty easily of this group, a lot of them, I guess. But the ones that I think are the most I guess likely to move for me are going to be those guys that are just outside my top 10, the Allen Robinsons, even just the Terry McLaurins. If they get an upgrade at quarterback, those guys are going to be threatening a lot of these guys.
Well, Washington trades for Deshaun Watson.
Right. Oh my God. He's he's probably a top 5 option right away, right? It has to be.
I think Washington needs to address the wide receiver position too. I'm a little hesitant, and you know how much I love Terry McLaurin. As part of the reason I thought Dwayne Haskins could do more. I still think I think that's a great pickup, by the way, by the Steelers. I know we're not talking about that, but is that Terry McLaurin? He's another one. Oh, all he can do is run slot routes. That's why he's going to be limited. I think that whether or not Kelvin Harmon's healthy, Antonio Gandy Golden steps up with one of the Sims, both of the Sims, Cam and Steve. These aren't options to be. Those are your options to be a number 3 wide receiver. They need if they sign. My concern with Terry McLaurin is even if they added Watson, this is what I'm getting to is if they sign Corey Davis, I think Terry McLaurin needs to stay as a fringe wide receiver 1 because he isn't he's not a DeAndre Hopkins. He's not a Calvin Ridley. He's not a Devontae Adams. He is who he is, and that's not a fault of his. But he is who he is, and he kind of needs that second guy next to him to even potentially make him better. But that top 5 probably is never just coming because of who he is, unfortunately.
Jake Seeley, everyone. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at AllInKid. Also, make sure and check out his full rankings over at The Athletic, of course. We can't give away the full answers to the test. It's February, Jake. We got a lot of shows, a lot of off-season hype to work through, obviously.
I have Justin Jefferson higher than you do.
No way. I'm gonna have to change that. You know, I like me some Justin Jefferson, so that might have to change. What you have one slot ahead of me right now, Jake? Where is it? Yeah.
Two.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Well, we'll continue to argue about this, I'm sure, but we'll talk to you soon.